All right, guys, welcome back. We are excited today. We have Ryan, the CEO of 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirits, and we're going to talk about some cool things. We're going to dip into a couple of spirits. Let's see what we can get into. All right, Ryan, how's it going? I really appreciate you coming on here and talking with me and giving me your time, because I know time is precious around here, and we want to make sure I make the best of your time. So why don't you introduce yourself and kind of give us a little bit of your background, if you don't mind.
Awesome. Yeah, you got it. Absolutely. Thanks for having me first and foremost, man. Love what you have going on. And we get to talk about one of my most passionate subjects, something I love chatting about and enjoying, which is the aged spirit of whiskey. So it's a great category. It's wide and vast, and then we can get geeked out on it too and get narrow on it. So excited to be here. My name's Ryan Thompson, founder and CEO of 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company, a philanthropic award-winning craft distillery located in Vail, Colorado. I was born and raised in Houston. I went to school in Dallas, and when I moved here in 1998, started bartending around town my first couple of years here. And really putting that college degree to use behind the bar. So lived a ski bum lifestyle for a couple of years, and then was about to go off and go to graduate school, and then ended up starting a restaurant 22 years ago, and that's called the West Side Cafe, which is in West Vail, and still have my thumb on that with two other business partners. Bought and sold a couple other restaurants and other businesses in the meantime. And then about 12 years ago, I was watching what the craft distillery movement was doing. I homebrewed at the time, just kind of for fun, for friends and family, personal enjoyment, and trying to learn that side of things. And then distillation is the next step after homebrewing, and was watching what the craft distillery movement was doing. And I was like, well, hell, someone in this valley is going to make whiskey sooner or later. I was like, well, screw it, might as well be me, right? Can't be that hard. I was watching Moonshiners at the time. It was a big show, I think, on the Discovery Channel or one of those. So I had a lot of fun watching that. And then I was flipping through a whiskey magazine and came across an advertisement for Moonshine University in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was the first class they ever did in January 2013. So I said, screw it, I'll go out and see what that's all about. And it's a week-long course, but it teaches you everything from A to Z about how to operate, run, market a distillery. And so enjoyed the class, had a good time with it, and came home and wrote a business plan and begged, borrowed, and stole as much money as I can put together, and put my house on the line and leverage that with an SBA loan. And then started with a 13-gallon still, and then graduated up to a 500-gallon hybrid still that is made from Vendome there in Louisville. And that's what we still use today. And here we are about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary on September 5th in 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. So
that is awesome. That is awesome to hear. And it's so cool that you started on the smallest still possible, and now you've moved on up. So before we get too much further, I've been holding on to this bottle for a minute. So this is the bourbon. Now we can get into any one of these you want, but I just thought the bourbon would be, the one to go to first.
Yeah, I think that's a great start. Absolutely. Okay. I think that's what I would have directed us to as well. It is, so I would say the bourbon, and then probably the rye, and then the single malt. So we're going to taste through all three of our aged expressions here tonight. Okay. So please, let's open up the bourbon and enjoy that. It is, you want me to get into some of the details on the bourbon?
Yeah. However you want to do it.
You got it. Great. Well, it's a 92 proof is our everyday expression bottled at. Sometimes at our tasting rooms, if you ask the bartenders nicely, that we might have a higher proof single barrel pick of some sort behind the bar. So keep that in mind if some of your listeners ever come through our town. But 92 proof, 75%. We're open about our mash bill. Hell, we're open about everything. People can try to replicate it, but it also comes down to the terroir of where we're making it all and aging it, and so it's going to be hard to replicate that. But so 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley. It's a mash bill that is in a couple different bourbons that are out there, but we make everything, age everything, and bottle everything on site at our distillery. Our distillery is located about 30 minutes west of actual Vail. Some of your listeners might be familiar with the Vail as a ski resort. It's a high rent district, and so we have a tasting room that's about 1,000 square feet in Vail Village, right at the base of the mountain. But we actually do our distillation in a 7,000 square foot manufacturing facility that we own and operate, which is about 30 minutes west in a smaller town called Gypsum, a little lower rent district than Vail. Hence, we're a little bit on the outside there. So use a number 4 char barrel. Majority of our spirits at this point are aged in 53-gallon barrels that we get from West Virginia, Great Barrel Company. As you can probably assume, they're from West Virginia. So with the number 4 char, and everything that we age or everything that we bottle at this point is a minimum of 2 years, depending on how geeked out you want to get. A lot of talk is out there that whiskey's aged in Colorado, certainly up where we're at in a little bit higher altitude, a little bit drier climate with a diurnal. Temperature fluctuations, it's a fancy word. It means that it might be 50 degrees tonight and 100 degrees tomorrow during the day, right?
Right.
With big temperature fluctuations, and all that really helps mature the whiskey a bit quicker. And so a lot of people are saying that whiskeys here in Colorado are aging about 3 years to every 1 year in other places. So although it is a bit of a younger whiskey, please don't make a snap judgment on the flavor just based on the age statement. A lot of people come into our tasting rooms and we'll say, no, that's too young. We're like, hey, before you make a judgment, why don't you taste it first and tell us how old you think it is? And most of the time, people are guessing 5, 6, 7 years old. But it's minimum of 2 years, and we usually have a 3 and 4 year mixed into it as well. We blend everything all inside. It's all our whiskey. So you might think it's certainly aged a little bit longer than what the age statement states on the actual bottle. So
that's awesome. And on the nose, it is really jumping out. There's some fruit notes. There's a lot of like apple. I'm getting a lot of apple, which I get a lot of apple in bourbons, but this is more like a red delicious apple. Yeah, and,
nice. I love it.
It's just really, really nice. Really nice. It's not harsh to the nose. With that higher rye content that you guys have, sometimes it presents a little too rye forward, but this one doesn't. This one has a really nice, approachable, dusty corn type nose, and it's really playing nice.
Yeah, that's a great description. Nicely done there.
Well, I am a whiskey sommelier, so it's kind
fantastic. Gotta love it. There you go. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, don't get it twisted. I don't know hardly anything. Once you open the door, like you well know, once you open the door, it opens you up to an entire world of stuff where you're like, oh God, I have no idea what I'm doing. So
100%, right? And that's why I love the industry. That's why I love the spirits category, whiskey in general. Just because it's wide and vast, and you can choose a way to go down what hole you want to go down, right? And there's so many great whiskeys out there, different whiskey categories, and so I agree with you on that, absolutely. But I know they don't pass out those whiskey somm certifications to just anybody. So
no, they don't, and it's rather expensive as well. So
right,
that's the other part. But so one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I should have done it, minutes ago when we first started. Where did you get 10th?
Yeah,
Mountain?
Sure, right. The namesake of the company, right?
Right.
So we're named in honor of the 10th Mountain Army Division. Okay. Which is a historic military division that originated just a few miles south of our hometown in a place called Camp Hale. And in 1943, 1944, they trained there as Mountain Warfare Specific Army Division. They learned how to ski and shoot and rock climb, snowshoe, and survive in the mountains. Just in case, there's our first mountain division that the United States had in the military, just in case when we got into World War II, there was a chance that we were going to be fighting in the mountains. And sure enough, 1944-45, the unit got deployed over to northern Italy and won some very significant battles in northern Italy. The Battle of Riva Ridge, they broke through the Gothic line and were able to push back the Nazis and keep Italy free and keep the Nazis from taking over that section of that country, that section of the world. And then soon thereafter, May 2nd is when the Nazis surrendered. May 5th is when actually the fighting stopped in that area of the country or that area of the world, excuse me. And then when the troops returned, they wanted to share the sport of skiing that they in the mountains and the mountain lifestyle that they had fallen in love with during their time in the division. And so when they got out of the army and were going on to their civilian lives, a lot of them ended up starting different ski resorts. Over 60 different ski resorts across the country were started by 10th Mountain Vets. Certainly a lot in the Northeast, a handful here in Colorado, and a couple out in the Lake Tahoe area and Washington area. And they had a very significant impact in the sport of skiing via media, via the technology and the equipment. Actually, the climbing gear called Pletzel, that company was started by a 10th Mountain Vet named Paul Pletzel. Nike was actually founded by a 10th Mountain Vet. So Phil Knight's business partner, a guy named Bill Bowerman, who was Phil Knight's track coach at the University of Oregon. But before he was a track coach, he served in the 10th Mountain. And so, of course, everyone's familiar with the shoe company Nike. The National Outdoor Leadership School, the Knowles Experience, was started by a 10th Mountain Vet. The Sierra Club, all politics and BS aside, they were started by a 10th Mountain Vet. When we talk whiskey, we don't talk politics. That's one of our rules at the tasting.
No, we don't. Amen. Amen to that.
Let's see, Bob Dole, rest in peace, but he had limited use of one of his arms, and that's because he was shot and injured in World War II when he was a 10th Mountain Vet. And so, they were deactivated in the mid-50s, and then they were reactivated in the mid-1980s as a quick deployment light division. So they now are based in upstate New York in a place called Fort Drum, which is about an hour north of Syracuse, hour and 15 minutes, in a place called Watertown, a little smaller town, just about 30 miles south of the Canadian border. But they're a light infantry division and a quick deployment division, and they've been in all the major confrontations and are the most active divisions over the last 30 years. 30 years, and a little bit over 30 years ago, in 1993 was the Battle of Mogadishu and Black Hawk Down. The 10th was in that conflict. They did not get all the recognition in the movie necessarily, but certainly some of the soldiers in the movie were wearing the 10th Mountain Patch. And I've certainly, we have a map of Mogadishu hanging at our taste room that was given to us a couple of years ago by one of the captains that was in that conflict. One of our good friends, another distiller in the whiskey business. He's actually the head distiller of Blackened Whiskey, Metallica's whiskey. This guy named Rob Dietrich. He was the head distiller of Stranahan's down in Denver for 9 or 10 years. But he served in the Battle of Mogadishu with the 10th Mountain. And certainly he and I have become close friends over the last 10 years. And then let alone, obviously, the Iraq and Afghanistan war, et cetera. So, So when we were starting the distillery, we were like, well, hell, let's name it in honor of the 10th Mountain, guys, because we want to be here in this great ski town, skiing a great mountain, and living a free life without what the men and women of the United States military have done and the 10th Mountain have done. And so from day one, we've used it as a platform to support different military nonprofits. And so our philanthropy is certainly a big part about what we do as an overall company, and support a number of different nonprofits, not only here in our backyard, but across the country. So
that to me is amazing. That is amazing what you guys are doing, and just paying homage to the people that fought for our lives and helped to secure the way we are. And like you say, all BS and politics aside, these people are putting their life on the line, and you guys are paying them homage by creating an excellent whiskey and just kind of giving back to that community. And there is quite a few people doing it, but there's nowhere near enough people doing it. And we don't thank our veterans and our people that have served enough. And I appreciate you guys for doing that. I myself am not a vet, but I do support all veteran endeavors because I know they do not get the justification that they deserve. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's our reason why as a company. And that's a big motivation in us growing, because that'll enable us to help support more organizations and the organizations we currently do on a different level. It's what keeps us going on a daily basis. Even when we're having a bad day, I think about some of the men and women that I've met that have lost a limb, an arm, and a leg, or maybe both. Certainly burn victims, et cetera, that have had way worse days than I can ever imagine. So no reason to complain about having a bad day when you think about what some of the men and women of our military have gone through. So
absolutely. And it's just really cool that you guys are able to give back, but then also stay true to yourself as well. And that's really cool. That's really cool that you guys are doing that. So what kind of sets you guys apart? And if you can't answer this, I understand. What sets you apart from some of the other distilleries that are around you?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, we've hit on a couple of those. Certainly the importance that we put on our shoulders in order to support the different military nonprofits. Certainly do a lot of support here in our backyard with just smaller organizations here locally as well. So we take seriously our philanthropic efforts. We have 2 full-time distillers and with a 500-gallon 100% copper column still. Pot column still, excuse me, it's a hybrid still. And so we're running that thing, and we lie down about 7 to 8 barrels a week. So about a barrel a day is what we're doing. So compared to some of the big guys, that had a 200-year head start on us, they're lying down 1,000, 1,100, 1,500 barrels a day, right? Which is just crazy to think about.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, right. Just the amount of volume they do, it's incredible. Can hardly wrap my head around it. But we're proud and passionate about lying down a barrel a day. Some other distilleries lie down a barrel a month, which is great as well. So, but certainly we're proud of making our stuff at our distillery, aging it at our distillery, bottling it all there. We have a semi-automatic bottling line. It's nothing fancy. It's mostly manual. We're not big enough yet to have one of those big fancy bottling lines that cost $150,000, but maybe next year, right? Maybe next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to have future goals, right?
Yeah, totally right. And so, but with that all that said, we've also won some pretty significant awards and are starting to get a little bit more recognition, and doors are starting to open slowly but surely after 10 years of doing this. I'm trying to push that snowball up the hill. We're nowhere near the top, but slowly but surely, when we walk into a new bar, restaurant, liquor store, American Legion, VFW, anything along those lines, people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of 10th Mountain out of Colorado. Sure. Absolutely. So we're getting that more and more of that. We're getting more and more, some random pictures being sent to us by a friend or an acquaintance that walks into a liquor store and finally sees it on their shelf in their local neighborhood. So seeing more of that happening. We just got distribution in Texas in your backyard there. So
cool.
With a distributor called Favorite Brands, and we've been working with them for just about a month now, and so far so great with them. Distribution is the toughest challenge about the whole business, but we're starting to get some movement there. But we can't grow too quickly. But we certainly have some room to grow, and that's the direction we're going. So I think for a number of reasons, we're different than our neighbor down the street, or maybe in another state as well. So
right, absolutely, and yeah, that people don't talk about that enough, about the whole distribution side of it, because you can make the best whiskey in the world, and if you can't get it in people's hands, you're kind of, if you're selling only at your distillery, that's a profit. That's a business model. Is it a good business model? Who knows? Some people can do it if you're in a very touristy area and you have foot traffic all day long and you sell out every day. Yeah, you can make that work. But really, the real way to do it is get it in people's hands, not in that town, in other areas. And with me being from Texas, there's a lot of Texas distilleries that can't get distribution outside of Texas just because it costs too much, or they want 20 pallets of whiskey and they can't make that much at one time. So it turns into kind of you get stuck in this little crux where you're like, okay, do I double down on production to get stuff out there in the world, or do I just focus on making the best thing I can, and whoever gets it gets it? And so luckily you guys are getting some good distribution and still maintaining the product that you want to produce. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. You got it. And it's one of those things that our distributors are different in each state. So some of the big companies, even the craftier big companies that have a celebrity brand on the image on the front of it, will work with a Southern Glacier or Republic National and go countrywide and be in 37, 40 states all of a sudden. But what a lot of people don't hear and don't understand is that they're going to Southern, they're going to Republic with a large marketing budget as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so God bless them. I'm not knocking anybody out there. Right. But I just don't have that ability to do it that way. So we like to work. We're with Southern here in Colorado. We've been with them for 10 years, and it's been a great relationship. But we're outside of this, our backyard here in different states, we are with smaller, mid-sized distributors where we don't get lost in their book of business. They'll still pick up the phone when we call them, and vice versa. And so maybe they don't have all the accounts out there, but we're not getting lost either and ignored. So that's our sweet spot. But yeah, distribution is the toughest thing. one aspect of that we've been playing in, I guess, if you will, is the direct to consumer. So we are in a state where we cannot ship direct to consumer ourselves. We have to use a third party. Over the last 6, 7, 8 years, there have been a couple different third party fulfillment providers that are shipping alcohol that have figured that tricky space out with the proper licensing, et cetera. And so we work with a third party fulfillment company out of Washington, D.C., and are able to reach consumers in 40 states at least, right? So you can go on our website, tintwhiskey.com, buy a bottle. Although it is our spirits and it comes from Colorado, it goes through Washington, D.C. They warehouse it and ship it as the orders come in. So although we are not in 40 states with traditional distribution, we can reach consumers in about 40 states still. So hopefully that's going to change and we'll be able to ship direct from our distillery one day. Who knows when that's going to happen? But in the meantime, at least there's a bit of a workaround.
So let's talk about that for a second. So, and this is not, I'm not trying to get into your profit margin or anything like that, because that I don't care about that. I want you to make all the money, believe me. But like, I know with me personally, if I go through some third party, and let's say I'm monetized or something like that, they take so much money out of it up front. Is it the same with these third party distributors?
Yeah, in the end, it really is. They take about the same margin as what a traditional distributor takes. So it's about equal. So, in the end, we're okay with it. It's the industry we chose to work in and play in. And so we can't really do much about those margins necessarily. But I will tell you, when we're able to ship direct ourselves, the first second that happens, we're going to be doing that.
Absolutely. Because if you can ship and just cut out that middleman, it makes it so much easier. Because the best thing is for people obviously to come to the distillery, buy a bottle right there, because that's not 100% profit, but at least it's a lot more profit. But when you have to go through somebody and go through somebody and go through somebody else, it's the trickle down effect doesn't. By the time it gets to you, it's a drip.
Yeah, right. Totally right. We always say it takes four actual sales to get to the consumer, right? So I'll explain it real quickly. First, we have to sell a state, and we have to get licensed in each state, which can be sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's a huge pain in the ass. But the state wants to make sure they get their taxes and their cut. So we have to sell the state, and then we have to sell a distributor. And we have to convince a distributor to bring us on board and that our products are actually going to move. It's not just going to collect dust and take up space in their warehouse. So that's what they're concerned about. That's their business model, and rightfully so. Then we have to sell on or off-premise accounts, which is on-premises bars or restaurants, country clubs, the VFWs, etc., or off-premise accounts where you buy it at a liquor store is considered an off-premise and take it home off the premise. So we have to sell them, and then we have to sell the consumer as a fourth. To go to that bar or restaurant and choose a 10th Mountain Rye Old Fashioned. Maybe they've been drinking another kind of rye old fashioned there for the last 10 years, and so we have to convince them to take a risk on dropping $15 for an old fashioned at a steakhouse or whatever the case is, and hopefully they like it, and then we'll go to the liquor store and buy it for home consumption as well. So in essence, it's really 4 sales to get a bottle to move. So. It's pretty interesting and tricky along those lines.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny that you said rye whiskey, because I have this. I mean, it's almost like it was serendipitous, right? So tell us a little bit about this while I pop it open.
Yeah, absolutely right. So our rye whiskey, our bourbon, we always at our taste rooms compare bourbon and rye to cornbread and rye bread, right? Because bourbon has to be at least 51% corn. Ryes have to be at least 51% rye. Our bourbon, as I stated earlier, is 75% corn. Our rye whiskey is 70% rye. And so you're cornbread's going to be a little sweeter. Rye bread's going to be a little spicier from that rye grain as the predominant grain in the mash bill. And so certainly we'll pick up some of those spicier notes, some baking spices possibly. I don't want to lead the witness here, so tasting notes, but it's 26% corn, 4% malted barley. Again, aged in number 4 char oak barrels for a minimum of 2 years. Rye traditionally matures. Everything ages at the same time. So if you want to get super geeked out, a lot of whiskey people you can't speed up aging. Everyone ages at the same time. All right, we get it, right? But everyone knows what we're saying. So it matures to be properly correct. It's a bit quicker. And that's above my head in science and chemistry and all that, right? You start throwing around 3-4 syllable words, I start getting dazed off and staring off into space, man. I don't understand those words. I try hard, but that's how I got to this position, man. I try hard. That's about it. And so a lot of ryes, you don't see a lot of really old ryes out there for that reason, because sometimes the whiskey will start turning negative. We'll start maybe getting over oaked, if you will. So our rye is a minimum of 2 years, again, 3 and 4 year in it as well. A lot of people will think it's a couple years older than that, but certainly our bourbon's our best seller because bourbon as an overall category is large and in charge these days, right? People are all about the bourbons. You go walk into a liquor store and hell, the bourbon category is about 50 yards wide, right?
It definitely is.
Right. Rye whiskeys certainly it's a growing category. Our rye whiskey is our most awarded spirit. Our bourbon's our best seller. So take that for what it's worth.
So let me give you, before you go too much further, I'm going to give you a little bit on it. This is very typical of some of the ryes that I've had, but it also has this almost like a bubblegummy type note, but not like weird bubblegum like you get in some, like, I don't know if it's Jim Beam products or something like that, but it has a really nice baking spice, which that's what you should get from rye.
Yep.
But then it's also very soft. I don't want to say smooth because, we don't say smooth. It's just it's very soft on the nose. And that could be because of the proof. This is at 43, right?
Yep. 80. So, yep. You got it. 43% ABV, 86 proof. You got it. Yep.
But on the taste, you definitely get that rye. It's very rye forward, obviously, but it's also like a little bit of, and this is super nerdy, but a little bit of like marzipan, which is like that almond taste. And then
you know you're hanging out with a whiskey som when they throw out marzipan as a tasting note.
Absolutely.
Traditional civilians, traditional consumers don't put that out there, but certainly.
No, exactly. But that's the thing. Like, we are trained to go past the simple caramel vanilla, cherry, which it has all of that as well, because those are barrel notes that you're going to get in any aged product. But like, it's funny how when I go deep on one of them, I said something about dusty plantains, and I was like, well, what's a dusty plantain? Well, I'm like, it's like corn dust from a corn feed sack, and then plantains where they're kind of sweet, but they're a little bit more like potato too. So it's like, it sounded great to me, but I got so much shit for it. It's like, okay.
Man, that's the one thing I love about tasting notes is that you're never wrong.
No, you're not.
So I can say I love that game, man. I can play a game where you're never wrong, man. I like that a lot.
Absolutely. So
if someone's giving you hell for a tasting note, you can tell them to kiss off, man, because you ain't wrong.
Absolutely. So what awards have you won with this one? Because it's getting pretty high marks in my book.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Certainly. 94 points in Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible. Just won a platinum in the Ascot Awards a month or two ago. Gold medal at San Francisco International Spirit Comp. Let's see. Those are a couple of top ones off the top of my head there. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, those are. I mean, for those being the ones off the top of your head, they're pretty big. So
not bad, right? We'll take it.
You're doing okay. So you guys have been around for almost. It'll be 10 years in a couple of weeks. What has been one of the biggest challenges that you have faced in the distilling process? It's a pay as you play type situation. What are some of the challenges you've ran into?
Yeah, thanks. It's I'm hearing that 10-year mark more and more often these days because it's right around the corner for us, and it's still hard to fathom, man. It still feels like a startup from yesterday morning, man.
Absolutely.
I can't believe we're 10 years down this road. It's I got to let that settle in a little bit, but and I said that we lie down about a barrel a day. 7-8 barrels a week, something like that. And I should have finished that thought by saying, as long as our equipment, none of our equipment is broken and our two distillers are not sick, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Or on vacation or whatever the case is, right? So as long as everything's operating at 100%, then we lie down about a barrel a day. And with that is to say that there's a lot of equipment, obviously, that goes into a distillery. So all distilleries are breweries first, right? And then you have some added additional equipment for the distillation process. But you have to make beer first. And so certainly if you've never been into a distillery, maybe you've probably been into a brewery. if you're tuning into this podcast. And so there's a lot of equipment going on. With all that equipment, a lot of shit breaks.
It does. It really does.
Man, so thank goodness our head distiller's been with us since day one. He will admit that he wasn't the most handy man to start with. He's learned a hell of a lot about how to fix equipment over the last 10 years. Our second distiller is incredibly handy, can pretty much fix almost anything. So we can troubleshoot and fix step 1, 2, and 3. If it's beyond that, maybe it's out of our scope, then we have to phone a friend and call in one of the manufacturers to fix it. But that's been certainly a hurdle in the distillation process, just learning all the equipment. The equipment is sensitive, so we have to treat it with kid gloves, sometimes, from everything from our grain scale to our mill. Our mill is the biggest bitch in the world, I'll tell you that much. That thing breaks down.
I've heard that before.
Just everything that keeps the distillery running. There's so many moving pieces. And we do all the maintenance once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once every 6 months. We have it all dialed in. So we try to do our best we can with preventative maintenance, but still shit breaks. So
it does. Yeah.
So if I walk into the distillery and one of the guys are not don't have something open and their insides are exposed working on something, then man, that's good, man. I'm happy if the stiller's running and humming along and the cooker's cooking and then and the distillers are whistling, then all is great, right?
Yeah.
So we've certainly had a learning curve with managing our equipment. I think has probably been one of the biggest hurdles in the overall distillation. Something that is incredibly not sexy about the business, something that I admire the moonshiners out there for, is that all the paperwork that we have to do, right?
Yes.
Most people don't realize that from the minute grain comes on a distillery's property till the minute it goes out in liquid form in a bottle, all those steps have to be tracked. And we have to file paperwork, our federal paperwork once a month. We do taxes once every 2 weeks. And I always say if we sneeze at the distillery, we need to write down the time and how far it went and how fast it went, because the TTB is going to call us and ask us about it.
Absolutely.
They certainly have the right to, and they have the right to walk in anytime they'd like, just to double check things. And what they're concerned about mostly is making sure they get paid. No one's undercutting their taxes. So the moonshiners out there, make it today, sell it tomorrow to get it out of their hands, and don't have to deal with all that paperwork out there. So I admire them from afar that they don't have to deal with that. And so that is another challenge, although it's not talked about at all because it's not sexy.
No,
but it is, just like any business, there's a hell of a lot of paperwork that goes along with it, let alone if you're licensed to make a drug and sell it. So.
Right, absolutely, and that's a part that we don't talk about hardly at all, because, like you say, it's not sexy at all. But it's something that if you're going to be a distiller or have a distillery or anything like that, that's one of the first things you need to understand. It's not you just running the still and pulling whiskey off and bottling it and shipping it out. It's all the paperwork that goes along with it. You have to have attorneys. You got to have all of these people lined up. Because guess what? Another thing for you as the boss, I'm going to call you the boss, right? You have to learn how to delegate as well. You have to learn to be like, that's way out of my pay grade. I need to find somebody to do that. Yes. Does it cost money? Absolutely, it costs money. But if you're not making money and if you're not delegating a task to someone else, then you're not doing it to its truest form. Because if you try to do everything under the sun just yourself, I am the worst at this, because I am a self-employed person working by myself. So you get what I'm saying. You cannot do it all. You cannot do it all. And so that's why I have a tax lady. That's why I have this. That's why I have this. So, it turns into a delegation task. And I mean, at some point at the end of the night, you got to go home and go to bed too. You can't, you have to be able to turn it off and go to the house and hang out with the family and stuff like that. You can't be like at the distillery 24/7. I know there's some days you have to be. I get that. But, it's really strange. Everybody looks at the hype of it. They don't look at the bottom line of the like, hey, we barely, broke even this quarter or whatever. That's some of the things that nobody talks about, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're exactly right. And I certainly couldn't be doing this and growing the company We've got 16 full-time people on staff, a couple of part-timers, and a handful of brand ambassadors out there, right? I've got a tasting room in Vail Village that's open right now. I can pull up the cameras on it, and there's 3 people there. We've got a band playing there tonight. I've got a tasting room at the distillery. No band there tonight, but my manager's there, and I just logged into our cameras there right before we got on. We had 6 people at the tasting room there. Our first distiller, our head distiller, is an early bird. He gets to the distillery about 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning. He does his roughly 10-hour shift. He's usually gone early afternoon, and our second distiller will arrive early afternoon and take it into the night until about somewhere 10, 11, midnight, something like that, right? I've got a guy at an event right now here locally, sharing our spirits at an event. I've got a distribution management team, sales team, 1 guy in Texas, 2 people in the Northeast, 1 guy here, or 2 guys here in Colorado, and then a handful of brand ambassadors out there as well. So if you are interested in becoming a brand ambassador, we do have that program. If you want a little side hustle out there, so that's a possibility too. So. And then obviously marketing and 2 full-time marketing people as well. So certainly I couldn't do it all myself. There are some distillers that get into it that want to be on the still all day long, manage the business and keep it small and local and et cetera, which is great. More power to them. That's a business model. But we're trying to grow this brand and try to become a national brand, but brick by brick and day by day and year by year. So
yes, absolutely. And that's what makes me, as the guy on the other side of the camera, it makes me so appreciative of people like you, because I know you're busy. I know you got shit you need to be doing right now, and you're taking the time to talk to me and have a drink of whiskey, which is pretty amazing for me and for you. You get to take a break. And we get to talk about your brand, which is awesome. But also, I understand that, like, you know, that the company, anybody's company, doesn't just run when you're not there. It's there's a lot of moving parts, and when you take one of those moving parts out, it can easily fall apart. So I appreciate you for being here.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I love doing doing podcasts and talking about it. One, obviously, like I stated early on, it's a big passion of mine, and I love having a conversation with others that are passionate about it as well. And this is an important part about the business, right? And growing it. And right. So next time one of your listeners walks into a liquor store, like, oh shit, I just heard about that 10th Mountain stuff. Yeah. Maybe we get it. Maybe they'll take a chance on us and hopefully like it. And maybe it'll become their go-to down the line. So right, no, I think this is as important as any of those other aspects of the business too. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I will tell you this rye whiskey. I mean, there's a little bit left. I'm doing very small pours, guys, because it is a Thursday night. We don't want to go too far. But it is really opening up. And, you know, people talk about the neck pour. I don't know if you've ever heard of the neck pour, where it needs a little oxidation inside the bottle. But it's coming across really nice and has a good spice to it. But then it's also just very unctuous. I say the word unctuous a lot, but it's very caramel, vanilla. It's very sweet, but also a little tart at the end. So it's a really great rye whiskey. So what is –
Thank you.
This is going to be a strange one, but I feel like it'll be a good talking point. If you could have 3 people, alive or dead, over for a distillery dinner, who would they be and what would you serve them?
All right, I got to start with Ben Franklin because he was a badass president, entrepreneur, and a distiller himself, right? Mm-hmm. So I think he's top of the list. I got to get greedy because I've always been a big Pearl Jam fan, and I would have Eddie Vedder over because I've always wanted to sit down and have a drink with him and hopefully not talk politics. He has a tough time not talking politics. I just like his music. So and I got to throw him in the mix. And, man, I guess I got to probably throw in someone that's probably deceased and really important now. Ben Franklin's deceased, right? So, you know, I think I'll throw out kind of a sentimental one aside from family and friends and deceased loved ones, but Dave Pickerell, man, he was incredible. He was incredible to the craft distilling movement. Yes, he had such a huge heart. His skills on the still were next to none, obviously. He made some incredible whiskeys. He gave back a lot in his last couple of years in life to a lot of craft distillers out there. We got a chance to hang a time or two at different conferences, and he was always an open book, just catch him in the hallway, catch him in the elevator, and man, he'd stop and chat and answer your questions. So, man, I think to have an opportunity to sit down at a whiskey dinner and chat with Dave one more time would be pretty special.
Absolutely, those are pretty great. Pretty great people. I would have picked Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, but
amen.
That's just
right on up there as well, right?
Kind of, there's the Pearl Jam people, and then there's the Soundgarden people, right?
Totally. Just let's not even talk about those Nirvana people, man.
Oh yeah, no, we don't talk about that. No, but it's so cool, and the reason I bring that up is because it kind of gets people to understand you as a person as well. Because like whiskey is great, and we're having a drink and we're talking about your whiskey, which is amazing. But also, it's not just the whiskey; it's you and it's me, and it's it's the personality and it's the relationship around the whiskey. And I feel like you guys, and tell me if I'm wrong, bring a lot of that into your whiskey as well.
Yeah, certainly, absolutely, and it's a lot of it has to do with the community that we support with the military.
Right.
And a lot of them, there's a lot of good camaraderie going on there. And certainly whiskey brings people together, opens up a conversation. A lot of good synergies are there, and a lot of good conversations and talks come from it, right? And so certainly the community that we support with the military, there's a lot of good natural camaraderie there already. And we're just adding a little fuel to the fire to keep that going. So. Right.
Yeah, I mean, because we at the end of the day, I've talked to a lot of different distilleries that they're all making whiskey and they're all doing a thing, and that's fine. But after a while, it gets kind of, you get in this routine of like, hey, what's your mash bill? What's your this? Then it turns into, hey, what's your story? And one of the big ones I say is, why are you doing this? That's a big one. Why did you do this? And I mean, you can answer the why if you want, because there's some people that got tired of their day job. Other people did it because like they just had a fascination for it. It just depends upon the person, and some people did it out of necessity. So it just kind of one of those things. Anyway.
No, and again, to elaborate on that a little bit more, our tasting room at the base of Vail Ski Mountain. So it's a great end of day for all the skiers out there. It's called après ski, after ski. The tradition, and within the community, the skiing community, it's kind of tradition to sit down and have a drink and talk about your day and have a little camaraderie with whoever you're skiing with that day or snowboarding with or whatever. And so our taste room was designed with that in mind. We have a TV at the taste room, but it's hidden about 95% of the time, unless there's a big sporting game on or something going on, right, that we need to tune into. But overall, it's hidden behind some sliding barn doors that have a Colorado flag on it. So most people don't even know what's there. So our tasting room was designed purposely to encourage people to not only have conversations with those that they've hung out with all day, but also to interact and maybe meet their next best friend there too, right? Or significant other or whatever, right? So that is certainly top of mind when we were designing our tasting room. So
yeah. So let's get into this. Y'all don't just make whiskey, is that correct?
Yeah, well, we make 7 spirits total, right? And so we're tasting through our aged whiskeys. So our bourbon and our rye, we've had our single malts coming up next, but we also make an unaged whiskey, which is our Colorado Clear Mountain Moonshine, which, moonshine had its heyday about 8 to 10 years ago, right? And now that category has been relegated to about ankle high and about maybe 10 bottles wide. And when 8-10 years ago, it was maybe belly button high and about 50 bottles wide. And you had all kinds of different pickles and cherries and fruit and all kinds of blackberries, all kinds of stuff going on with it, right?
Yeah.
But we do make an unaged whiskey. We refer to it as a moonshine, which is not a category recognized by the TTB, but it's more of a slang term that usually alludes to an untaxed spirit sold under the table. Ours is taxed, and ours is technically classified as an unaged whiskey. To be an unaged whiskey, it has to be at least 80% corn. Ours is 100% corn, so we just take our corn, grind it up, and distill it off. And it's a great educational tool. Most people don't know that whiskeys, aged whiskeys, get their brown amber color by the aging process in the barrel.
Right.
And so a lot of times people are like, that's not whiskey. That isn't a clear spirit. How is that whiskey? And so it opens the door to us to have that conversation, to educate him on the aging maturation process. So, and it comes in a fun little mason jar, right? 750 mil. As it should if it's being called moonshine. We make a potato vodka, which just won best in class at the American Craft Spirit Awards this past February. So that was a fun recognition to get. Contrary to popular belief, I don't always drink aged whiskey. On occasion, you have to take a break and have a little vodka every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Dad was around, he would always have a vodka martini. If it wasn't a whiskey that we were making, he'd go a vodka martini with 2 olives. I'm like, Dad, why 2 olives? He's like, one for you and one for the pretty lady sitting next to you. I'm like, damn good reason, Dad. Damn good reason. So I'm known to have a dirty martini on occasion. Most vodkas out there are grain-based. Certainly some of the most popular ones are corn based. And I think those just have a little bit of an edge to them. I had always preferred potato vodka even before I started a distillery. Chopin was my favorite vodka. Fucking pinkies up, right? I just preferred potato vodka. And so we weren't going to make a vodka, but I was at Moonshine University and they're like, Ryan, vodka is the 35% of the overall spirits market. At least 10 years ago it was. I assume it still is today, something like that. And if you're not an aged spirit drinker, more than likely you drink vodka. Right. And so they're like, you sure you want to ignore 35% of the overall spirit market? I was like, got it, understand. So we do distribute it, but most importantly, it gives us some flexibility at our tasting rooms with different cocktails. A lot of people come in our tasting rooms. We hang our hat on our whiskey expressions. It's in our name. But people are like, oh, I don't drink whiskey. You're like, oh, we got you. Come on in. We got vodka. We got a couple other things. So potato vodka. We make a brandy, which I never in a million years thought we'd make brandy. But we make a brandy made from Pinot Noir grapes from Monterey Valley, California. A little backstory on that. We support a military nonprofit called the Vail Veterans Program. They take wounded vets from around the country and reintroduce them to an active outdoor lifestyle, given whatever kind of physical challenges they had sustained in the war. They do a couple other things as well with families and mental health and getting vets back on their feet. And so I became close friends with a veteran that went through that program. And so his name is Kyle Pletsky. He ended up getting a job at this vineyard in Monterey. A couple of years later, I become friends with his boss as well. His boss comes out here on vacation. We all become friends. They called me up and said, we have 3,000 gallons of Pinot Noir left over. Do you want it to distill and make brandy out of? I was like, shit. First of all, I've never bought a bottle of brandy off the shelf, so I don't know. Second, how much does 3,000 gallons of Pinot Noir cost? Most importantly, their answer was, cost, we're just going to give it to you. I'm like, well, shit, in that case, bring it on.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So they're like, we'll give it to you. You can experiment with it. If it turns out great and you can sell it, then cut us in on the back end. All right, deal. So it ended up being 3,500 gallons that first year. It's now 5,000. It was 5,000 gallons the second year. So we lied down. It yielded about 32 barrels, aged in our ex-bourbon cask. Brandy has to be aged for at least 2 years. It can age less than that, but it has to be called an immature brandy. We were in no hurry to sell it, so we let it age for 2 years. Fast forward again another couple years, and it's been it was recognized as one of the top 3 brandies in the country by USA Today. So
wow.
From not even knowing really what brandy was and never buying a bottle and maybe having a sip of cognac or whatever, right? Somewhere along the lines, to now having a brandy that's pretty well recognized and known. So that's pretty exciting. We sell it in a 375 milliliter for $29. So, and that's 95 proof. Then our last spirit is our cordial, which is a sage peach vanilla cordial, along the sweetness lines of a Tuaca, maybe Grand Marnier, something like that. But it was influenced by some local flavors here in Colorado with a lot of sage in the state, a lot of peaches on the western slope out near Palisades and Grand Junction. If people know the Colorado geography, on the western slope of the Rocky Mountains. And so we took those flavors and then used vanilla as kind of a blending agent between the two of them and came up with a flavor that wasn't on the market yet. And it's a fun flavor that really has a supporting spirit in cocktails. It mixes great with our rye whiskey. It goes great in the summertime in iced teas or lemonades. If you're a morning drinker, put it in your coffee or mix it in with some syrup over your pancakes. Certainly goes good in a hot chocolate as well. So a lot of different ways to enjoy it. A lot of people just drink it straight up. Cordial as an overall category is a little harder sell, but once people taste it, then they're immediately hooked and are buying it. So certainly sell a lot of it at our tasting rooms when we can sample people with it.
Right.
It's certainly harder for it to get to move at the local liquor store. People don't know what they're tasting. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I'm guessing you do like a flight at the distillery or
yeah, we sure do. Exactly. Yeah. You can either do a flight of our whiskeys, of our aged whiskeys, or of all 7 spirits itself. We do tours as well at the distillery. So do a tour and tasting flight, really dig in deep. We also do a fantasy whiskey camp, which is a lot of fun for people and become a distiller for a day.
Okay.
And not every day we do everything from A to Z, right?
Right.
We distill Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Fridays we barrel. Pretty much every day we're bottling. So it just depends what's going on. But on the days that we have fantasy whiskey camp, we make sure everything's lined up from A to Z. So you're there on it's a 7-hour day. We start you off with Bloody Mary. You're going to get your hands dirty with our distillers. We stop for a barbecue lunch that's catered in. We finish it with a tasting through our 7 flights, and then we do a little cocktail class at the end as well. So it's just a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun for us. It's a ton of fun for our guests. So we do that as well. So
it sounds like it. Okay, so let's get into the one that I personally have been so excited about, and that is the American single malt. Now, I know that if you producing a single malt, you know all about the TTB regulation about single malt in America, and how they've been dragging their feet for 2 years. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
My take on it is that American single malts are a category, and they're here to stay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're not going anywhere. If they're recognized by the TTB or if they're not, whatever, so be it. But they're here to stay. They're certainly not going anywhere. They're not all smoking. A lot of people are like, oh, is it like Scotch? Yeah, kind of, but kind of not.
Yeah.
Ours is not peated. We do not use a peated barley, which maybe your listeners know, maybe they don't, but that's where a lot of the smokiness comes from. Scotch is the peated. The peat is a petrified moss that's over in Scotland that they use to stop the germinating process in grain. That's enough geeking out on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so ours is just.
I've done 5 episodes on Scotch, so yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. And I love Scotch. Man. If I put a bottle of Scotch, I drink that stuff like water, man. It's dangerous.
Absolutely.
And so let's see, where was I? So about 5 years ago, we were just watching what, again, the single malt category was doing. Certainly a couple distilleries out there were making some great ones. One here in our backyard, Stranahan's is a single malt. Some of those guys up in the Northwest are making some great stuff. And so I just talked to our head distiller, Sean. I was like, man, let's give a shot at single malt. It wasn't really in the business plan early on. Sean needed to move some malt anyways, some malted barley grain. And so I was like, hell, let's make a couple barrels and see what happens. A little bit different distillation, a little bit, different cook and different distillation. But in the end, it's all the same process. Lie it down in our number 4 charred oak barrels, again, for a minimum of 2 years. I've got a tasting note that I think is spot on with this, which kind of is funny as well. But our distributor manager, Brian Dewar, yes, his last name is Dewar, and he is connected to Dewar Scotch. Speaking of, so
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but his family, it's a long story. But yeah, his great granddad somewhere along the lines was the originator there. Anyways, wow. He was a Marine. Then he was worked for Homeland Security, and then got sick of carrying a gun. He still carries a gun. He's a big hunter. But got sick of working for government and wanted to come work with us. And so we actually met him wearing his Base Camp 40 military nonprofit T-shirt that he sits on the board of. That's how we originally met. We do a lot of work, different barrel picks, and we did barrel pick with him. So we got to know each other for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then he reached out and said, hey, man, you got a position. So we brought him on board. I think he's a whiskey somm as well. He's certainly going that direction. But we were chatting a couple weeks back and came up with a very spot on tasting note, but I don't want to lead the witness. So,
oh gosh, here we go. You'll put me on the spot now. Oh man, Now I will tell you this. Why? Well, I will ask you this. Why new charred oak barrels? Why not a used barrel?
I think it's just something we were playing around with, and it's just it provides a different flavor, the flavor profile that we were looking for. So, just as personal preference, I think is all it is. So, something just our head distiller. When we light it down, we were like, we didn't know if it was going to be anything or not. So we really didn't consider a whole lot of options. Now we have. Now we're starting to light it down. It's starting. We just started distribution with it, so we just started entering it in competitions as well. It just won Best in Show at the Key West Spirit Competition this past February. So Best in Show over about 100 different whiskeys, and the judges are distillers and passionate whiskey consumers as well, both judging that. And this, and it's all double blind tasting competition. So that was exciting to get that recognition. I don't know if your guys are familiar with Steve Akeley and the ABV network. But he's out of a place called Arnold, Missouri, just a little bit south of St. Louis. He has opened up his own liquor store about 2 years ago as well, and they only sell barrel picks. And they have a tasting syndicate, which is made up of, as I understand it, 10 to 12 of some of their most passionate consumers there. And each barrel pick they get in, the tasting syndicate will taste through it and rate it. And our single malt barrel pick they did was the highest rating barrel pick they've ever done, and I think they're up to 124 barrel picks or something like that. So it also just won a double platinum at the Ascot Awards last month. So we're super happy with that. So we'll see where it goes, man. It might become it is certainly a mainstay, but it might become what we're most well known for in 5-10 years down the road. We'll see.
All right, so here's my notes, and you tell me if I suck or not.
Okay. I know you don't. I've heard what you've been throwing out so far, man. You threw out marzipan.
Yeah, exactly. So on the nose, it's super. Like you get the maltiness, like that. I don't want to call it the malt funk, but you get that maltiness. But it's almost like, if you're British, it's called barley sugars, or like if you've ever tasted LME, liquid malt extract. It reminds me of that on the nose, but it's dark, molassesy almost. And then on the taste, it is like, it's like cherry cheesecake with the graham cracker crust, really creamy center, and then that cherry compote stuff, kind of sweetness on the top. But maybe the graham cracker has some of the leftover barley mash in it. I don't know. That it's really nice. It's super, for my palate. It's sweet, which it's desserty for me, which is great. I love that. Nice. Obviously, it doesn't have any added sugar or anything like that in it. This is just the barrel sugar, but like it's really coming across really sweet comparatively to the other two. Obviously, it's an excellent single malt.
Thank you.
So now you tell me what you got, and I'll see if I can.
We came up with the analogy, the tasting of that. It's right when a hay barn, when you just open the doors that haven't been open in about 10 years, and you walk into the hay barn, and then there's a leather tack room on the right where you start smelling a little bit of that leather coming through, but the hay is the more primary note. And so then some of that old school leather still seeping in. It's just some earthy tones to it. And I think that's probably spot on with it. I love that for some reason.
No, that is a great note. And now that you say that hay, grassy, I don't want to call it grassy. Right. Grassy sometimes comes off as negative, and I don't want to sound negative with it. It's that hay, that wicker almost a little bit. Old wood.
Yeah,
totally, right. It's not wood burning kit, but it's close to it. Almost like branding iron in the fire. Now we're talking cowboy stuff. So.
Totally. 90 proof, presented at 90 proof, bottle at 90 proof. One, I think a big. I probably should have mentioned this when he asked what's a couple things that make us stand out from somebody down the road.
Yeah,
we age. Where our distillery is about 6,800 feet in altitude, and science aside and chemistry aside, our angel share, we lose water. So we enter the barrel at about 120 proof. After the first year, it's going to be 125 proof. and then it continues to go up from there. So 128, 132. We have some hazmat barrels, 140 proof and above, that taste like absolute candy. A lot of places around the country, the Angel share is they lose alcohol, right? Which I feel sorry for them. I really do. That sucks. We're fortunate where we lose water, so our alcohol remains, and then our proof increases as we age. We use a reverse osmosis water to proof back down to bottle strength. But as I alluded to earlier, so you can ask our bartenders at our tasting rooms, and more often than not, we have a high proof barrel pick behind the bar as well. For the folks in the know, if you will. So it's so in our single malt, 130, 140 proof, it's a head turner.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and okay, so speaking of single malt, which, like we talked about, does not have a delineation, and you can do basically whatever you want. Have you done any cool finishing things with it or anything like that?
Not only with our single malt, but with our rye and our bourbon as well. We do have a couple experiments lying down. Again, when you come visit the distillery, we'll make sure we get the thief out and start popping some bungs there. So
that sounds amazing. Now you're gonna make me come up there.
You're damn right. So yeah, we do have a couple of things lying down. On occasion, we'll release different finishes. We had a Pedro Jimenez, a PX cast that we were using for a minute there. We have a couple different grain variations lying down that are maturing in a way we never saw it happening necessarily. It wasn't our original plan, but we're liking them. And so, yeah, we do have some things lying down. So, yeah.
Cool. So what, I mean, are you pretty with your aged spirits, especially? I mean, you do a potato vodka, so that's a little bit more different than some of the other vodkas out there, obviously. But what is like one of the strangest ingredients that you've used in a mash? Like a lot of people right now are using heirloom corns and Johnny Red and all of these things. Have you thought about doing any of that?
Yeah, boy, if you want to geek out on corn, do you know who Gary? I'm going to butcher his last name. Heinberger. He's from Dad's Hat Distillery.
Oh yeah.
Or I'm sorry, not Dad's. He's from Wood Hat Distillery.
Wood Hat. Yes.
He's it's about 30 minutes west of St. Louis, 45 minutes. He grows his own corn. If you go visit him, man, he'll take you in the back room and show off 8-9 different types of corn and unaged whiskeys and shines, man. And he'll talk your ear off about corn, man. He's a blast, dude. He's just turning 80 years old. I think they're having his birthday this weekend. So he's become a good friend, man. He has this unique voice, and he just geeks out on corn, which is hilarious, I think, for everybody. Yeah. And he's so passionate about it, man.
Right.
I think to answer your question, we have it's not in our everyday spirits, but certainly we have experimented with it, and some of those ones we're lying down have some different mash bills in it. Our everyday, I mean, I never thought we were going to have a Pinot Noir grape to make brandy with.
Right.
So all brandy comes from fruit, right? You hear a lot of apple brandies or pear brandies.
Right.
So grapes obviously are fruit, and so we can make brandy out of Pinot Noir grapes, which I think is really unique, and certainly from Monterey Valley, California, where a lot of great wine comes from.
Right.
So that's probably in our everyday spirits, that's our most unique ingredient. So.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, that is super cool that you guys, I mean, I don't want to say it like this, but you're staying in your lane. You're trying to find, the single malt's only what, 5 years old?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Like the idea of it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where you're still treading water where you're like, hey, we don't know how these barrels are. Are you getting some older age statement single malts and stuff as well? Or are you just pulling them all at 2? Or
no, certainly have some older ones as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And some higher proof ones. And so, man, those are a lot of fun and are damn delicious.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so after a certain amount of time, especially with single malt, it starts going really weird. And because like you try some, and I'm gonna equate this to like balcones in Waco, right? You get some of their stuff that's 5-6 years old. It tastes totally different than their 3-year-old stuff. And of course, we're in Texas, a little bit different climate, but we don't get probably as much Angel Sarah as y'all do. But anyway, I mean, yeah, just trying to see in the future, I guess that would be my next question. Where do you see your lineup in the future, where it's going? A higher age statement with more barrels put down, expansion in the distillery, you're already running almost 7 days a week. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we're distilling 4 days a week, and then we barrel bottle on the 5th day, Saturday, Sunday. Nothing's going on distillation wise. Our tasting rooms are open. We're doing tours and whatnot, but certainly are looking to expanding to adding a 3rd distiller and distilling on Friday, Saturday, Sundays as well. That's certainly an opportunity for us. With that comes, another full-time distiller, and then all the raw material as well to back that up. And so it's another step up, which we're hoping to get to, which we will get to in a matter of time. But I'm not a silver spoon and don't have a trust fund that's financing this deal either. So got to do it methodically and as the budget allows. So we are in the midst of planning another rack house on property.
Okay.
So cool. I'm working with an architect as we speak about that. So that we'll look to get that completed next spring is the idea. To give us some more warehouse space. And then certainly our bourbon, rye, and single malts. We love our 3 expressions. I don't plan to make any other expressions right now at this point. I would selfishly like to make an American agave spirit because I like tequila, but our head distiller, he goes cross-eyed when I talk to him about adding that in the mix, so I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, certainly continuing to lie down what we're making here. We like our mash bills. Our still is humming along, and certainly know the intricacies of that at this point. Right. And certainly as we mature and age ourselves, then I think our whiskeys are going to come along with us. So
that is a great way to put it. Like you're growing, your whiskey's growing. That's probably the best way anybody could put it, because from what I can see right now, you guys are doing some amazing things. That single malt really sings to me. The bourbon and rye are both amazing. They're doing really cool stuff. And one of the things I want to do, this is just me personally, since you were gracious enough to hand these bottles over, I want to give somebody in the comments a couple samples of these. That way they can have these and try them and let me know what they think and let you know what they think. Because obviously you and I both know positive feedback, negative feedback. Feedback is good. Yeah. We need feedback on what we're doing. And so what I'll do is, I might do a hashtag 10th Mountain or something like that. And we'll go from there. And I think it's going to be really cool to see what you guys have in the future. I mean, you're already working on your 10th anniversary, which is a pretty big deal. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there real quick while you're talking about that. So on July 4th, I mentioned Rob Dietrich, head distiller of Black and Whiskey, which is Metallica's whiskey, 10th Mountain vet, used to head the still at Stranahan's. He lives in Denver, so just about an hour and a half away from us. We invited him up to come join us and to collaborate with us and pick our barrel selects for our bourbon, our rye, and our single malt that we are releasing on our 10-year anniversary. And so although they are not 10 years old, they do have a little extra age on them and are different proofs that Rob approved of. We sat down and went through, he and our head distiller, Sean Hogan, and I, on July 4th of all days, which was great. And so certainly we're going to release those here in just a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And if anybody wants to go to 10thwhiskey.com, they can go check all that out. I'm sure y'all have a mailing list and stuff like that where everybody can keep up to date. And since we're on that, go ahead and give us any of your personal socials or the business socials that anybody can find you guys at.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Personally, I'm not on social media. How about that? But I certainly recognize the importance of it business-wise. So we are quite active across all socials, and our social handle is 10th MTN Whiskey. That's 10th MTN, then Whiskey, WHISKEY is our social handles. And even active on TikTok, although our distillers are not dancers, so don't expect any dances from us.
I mean, there's that. And I will have all that listed in the description down below, so y'all don't hesitate to go down there and find you some of this cool stuff that they're doing. And like you say, you ship through a third party. So if they want to buy a bottle, they can buy a bottle and get some of that. Okay. Do I have any more questions? I think we're good. No, you guys are doing amazing things. I thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on here and hanging out with me for a little bit and letting us sample through a couple of these whiskeys. It was an amazing time, and I can't wait to see what you guys are doing in the future. And for those of y'all who are listening, watching, all the things, please make sure you follow, like, subscribe, do all the things. Thank you to my sponsors, Bad Motivator Barrels and Z Smith Whiskey and Mixology. Thank y'all very much. And until next time, keep your spirits up.
I love it. Thank you.